Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237. Coming at you with another Hammer Dracula review. Yeah, we've gone back to the old lighting. We had maintenance come in, we got new lights, and haven't figured out what I like yet, so we just went back to that. So if the lighting is bad, I apologize. But anyway, continuing the Hammer Dracula series with, I don't even know what number we're up to now, but Scars of Dracula. It was released in 1970, along with a double bill with Horror of Frankenstein. Because at that time, reviews and audiences were starting to dwindle down. It's like the series had run their course, so Hammer decided to reboot both Frankenstein and Dracula. What ended up happening was, of course, I have reviewed Horror of Frankenstein already. That just became a standalone, really dark comedy, almost parody. This is, I guess, a reboot. It breaks continuity of the films that came before it. They also, because of the growing salary of Christopher Lee and the growing reluctance of Christopher Lee to return to the role with each film, they decided to reboot it with this in the event Christopher Lee could not or would not return. And what resulted was we got 3 more films with him. I'm only reviewing 2 more after this. I'm not reviewing the Legend of the 7 Golden Vampires, because it's not entirely crucial to the series, plus it's like a martial arts film, which I'm not into getting that right now. But anyway, and apparently, according to my readings, this is the first Hammer film to be rated R, which doesn't quite make sense because Taste the Blood of Dracula is also rated R, and that came before this. Unless it means upon release, and then, you know, the MPH went back after the fact and re-rated them. But, like many of the other Hammer horror films I have, this is the Scream Factory release. I love these Scream Factory releases. I'm finding them very cheap, which is great. I like the 4-pack of Dracula that I have. All the multi-packs of Hammer, I want to get the Scream Factory releases, because they do a great job. Comes with commentaries, a featurette called Blood Rights, and it's mostly commentaries, theatrical trailer. But anyway, and the thing about this movie is it doesn't add anything new to the series. If you're a fan of Christopher Lee or Hammer or the character Dracula, then I guess it's worth it. But story-wise, it doesn't really go the total reboot route where it retells the first story like the way Frankenstein did. It has elements of Bram Stoker's novel, and the fact that at one point Dracula does become a host. He's the icily chilling host, as he's been called. His power over nature, such as bats, his ability to scale walls, that's all from the novel. It hasn't really been explored in previous films, Hammer or Universal. It was directed by Roy Ward Baker, who had a long career. He even directed several of Amicus films, which I haven't talked too much about Amicus yet. I reviewed Tales from the Crypt, the 70s film. They were a British film company that in the 70s was specializing in horror films, especially anthologies, but I'm going to get to Amicus at some point because I am collecting those as well. The only actor that I recognized was Patrick Troughton, I'm guessing is how you pronounce it. He played the character of Clove, the servant. I'm like, who the hell is that? That guy looks really familiar. I was like, I bet that's who that is. And then I looked him up, and yeah, he plays Father Brennan from The Omen, the priest that gets the pole through him. Another one of my favorite movies. But yeah, he's the only person I recognized, other than Lee. But yeah, the film, it starts out, and this is why it breaks continuity, because in the last film, he died or he was defeated in an old church in London. Now we're back in his Transylvanian castle with his red, dried ashes laid about on a table. This obviously fake bat, you can tell it's just a rubber bat, hovers over him, pukes up some blood. The blood mixes, and then you get not the best crossfade kind of cut, turning into a skeleton, then into Christopher Lee. It's not the best. I've seen better, even in previous Hammer films. Allergies. I promise I will make a video one day where I don't have to wipe my nose or sniff and all that shit. And actually, I will say, even though I love matte paintings for backgrounds or even whole sets like a castle, Hammer has had some great matte paintings. The ones in the opening for this, or even when you're looking down the cliffside to get out of the bedroom or into Dracula's chamber, the paintings are extremely obvious in this film. But it didn't completely ruin the movie for me. But anyway, so Dracula's now alive. He doesn't explain how his ashes got there, what happened to him in London. It's just, they just went the reboot route and said, yeah, fuck it. But it also doesn't make the opening make sense, because then why resurrect him? Why not just have him be alive? I don't know. It's like they couldn't make up their minds right off the bat. It's like, are we rebooting? Are we making a sequel? Let's just contradict and be confusing. And so then we see a father carrying his young daughter with bite marks. The villagers are pissed. They know it's Dracula. They go up to his castle. They set fire to it. And then we're in this place called, I think it's Kleinenberg. Kleinen something. Which, of course, Dracula's not harmed by the fire, because he has this stone part of the castle way up on, like, the tower. There's like this stone chamber that you can only get in through a window outside, which outside the window is a huge ass drop. That's where his coffin is, so he was safe from the fire. But this was a pretty. I liked this. This was pretty. Like, wow, that's a hell of a way to start a movie. When all the villagers come back into the village, they go into the church, and every woman and child has been killed by bats. We see their faces are all mangled and chewed up. So while they were away, that's why we don't see it, we just see the aftermath. And the gore effects are still pretty good. We see another character have a similar fate towards the end of the film, which doesn't look as good. But I would say the blood and gore effects are still well done. It's still Hammer. Cheap but effective. And from then on, it's really just Kleinenberg. Okay, I'm guessing it's a place near Germany, because there's a Meister. There's a birthday party for this woman named Sarah. She's with her boyfriend Simon, but they make it sound like she's in love with Simon's brother Paul, because all Dracula films, the main character is fucking Paul. Just like his assistant, Clove. Prince of Darkness, he had an assistant named Clove, but very different character. Same thing with Hans in the fucking Frankenstein series. Paul, of course, he's like the Charlie Sheen type. I don't like 2.5 Men, but here's a reference. Paul is like Charlie Sheen, and Simon's like the other brother. He's the partier that likes women. He's the one that's trying to have a relationship. He's with the Burgermeister's daughter. He goes to leave. She gets pissed, tells the Burgermeister, who sees her naked, wrapped up in a blanket, says, "Oh, he tried to rape me." So he sends his men after him. Paul flees in a stolen coach. And after trying to have sex with a tavern lady, way out at a tavern somewhere, he ends up at the castle. And that's where we see Christopher Lee for the first time after being resurrected. And the thing about this film is it gives Lee more to do. I would say other than the first film, he has the most screen time, he has the most dialogue, and he looks like he gives a shit. I mean, when he's talking to Paul, yeah, he's kind of dry and kind of solemn. But he's still believable. He still does it well. He has his female vampire lady, Tanya, who was played by... Oh, great. Anuska Hempel. And also, like Horror of Dracula, she starts to seduce Paul. They have sex. The next morning, she looks at his neck, goes to bite him, and then that's when Dracula comes in, all pissed off, vampire mode, and kills her. And then, more things that don't make sense, he stabs her. He has a big dagger, and he just stabs the fuck out of her. Why would a vampire have to stab somebody? I don't know. He then drinks her blood. Why would a vampire need to drink vampire blood? I don't know. Just one of those things that don't make sense. They did it just because, I guess. They actually... You see him start to, like, go down. Then it cuts away to Paul. Because Paul got thrown across the room with ease by Dracula. So I think he was supposed to be sucking her blood, but they cut it out. And even though the scene is really ridiculous, Lee does it very well. Like, after his facial acting, his reactions, when he's done stabbing her, it's like, he just... Certain things he does with his face, like how he emotes through the whole thing, I thought was well done. And then Paul tries to get out the window of the bedroom with a bunch of the curtains from the bedpost. It rips. He lands on the windowsill into that stone chamber with no way out. And then the rest of the film is literally Simon and Sarah trying to find him. They retrace the steps. They end up at the castle, and eventually they find out who he is. There's a showdown. He sends her to get the priest. The priest gets killed by bats. We only see Dracula scale the wall once. And this movie's really random. I mean, I like how it incorporated elements from Bram Stoker's book that no other film had. Being able to communicate with bats, scaling the walls, stuff like that. That's all fine and dandy. And yeah, Christopher Lee had more to do. He had more to say, more screen time. That was excellent. But, the opening wasn't really needed. Because if you're going to reboot it, why have a resurrection scene? Especially if you're not going to explain anything, and it just seems random. Even though the death scene with him stabbing his vampire chick looked cool, it was bloody and everything, but it's kind of silly seeing the world's most evil vampire just stabbing someone and then not show him sucking her blood. There's a scene where he tortures Clove by getting a sword hot, touching it on his back. Paul has a picture of Sarah in this expensive frame that he had made, but he broke it, so he was holding on to it because it was her birthday. He finds it and he holds on to it. Like when he dismembers her body, he like sets it up so he can look at it. For the most part, this movie is just, it's uninspired. Other than the few little touches from the book that I already mentioned, it doesn't add anything new. As a reboot, it doesn't feel like a fresh start. And this movie got really bad reviews upon release. People did not like it. I mean, they praised the fact that Lee got more dialogue and screen time. It went back some elements of the novel. But other than that, people it was sort of like when Friday the 13th and Elm Street finally hit the 90s. They were just kind of like, let it go already. Like, you kind of run its course. I mean, it would have done better as just another, here's another sequel just because. But it's a reboot, so I have to think of it that way. And even how Dracula's defeated at the end, which spoilers here, I guess, but they're up on the roof of the castle, and he picks up, I guess, metal rod or a sword or whatever. It gets struck by lightning, and he bursts into flames. And we see Dracula on fire for like a full minute. Which, when it shows Christopher Lee up close with his burnt face, the effects look cool. Then he falls over the edge of the castle, and like any other horror film, or even Italian film for that matter, instant ending. No closing, no nothing, just he falls, which it's a distant shot of the castle. You see like this little fireball falling. You hear his scream, and then the credits roll. Yeah, it doesn't add much at all. I know I said that already. I mean, this film is just worth checking out for the sake of, it's a Christopher Lee Dracula film. It's a Hammer Dracula film. On that basis alone, it's worth checking out. But and also go into it knowing that it's a reboot, so it's not going to make sense to any previous film. Not that even films in the series, anyway, are... Hammer's never really paid close attention to a narrative, anyway. The characters are kind of bland. The plot is paper thin. It's just a bunch of, different scenes put together to get from beginning to end. And this really is just like, fans of the series will appreciate it. Or fans of Hammer, fans of Dracula, fans of Christopher Lee. The casual horror fan, maybe not, but yeah, didn't add anything new, but if you're a fan of anything I just said, then you'll probably enjoy it. But anyway, that is Scars of Dracula. Thank you for watching.